Hello and welcome to our MAD webinar. My name's Tor Mackenzie. I am the chair of MAD and I am delighted to welcome Vicky Newham along as our R&D tax credit specialist. Looking forward to hearing some useful information and tips from Vicky in terms of R&D and whether businesses are eligible and qualify for some money back from HMRC. What's not to love? So over to you, Vicky. Hello.
Brilliant. Hi, Tor. Thank you very much. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the R&D tax credit scheme, particularly about the changing face of R&D tax credits. There's a lot of stuff in the press at the moment about how HMRC are tightening up, but what's the reality of that and what does that mean for you as a business owner? And essentially what most people want to know is there still some money available? Is it worth making a claim? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But first of all, I'm going to start with a little bit of background to the R&D scheme. I'm not going to bore you with loads and loads of information about the background, but it just gives a bit of context about what has happened over the years with regards to R&D tax credits. So it started in the year 2000. It's always been there to reward innovative businesses, and certainly when it started, it was seen as something for very highly technical, highly innovative businesses such as pharmaceuticals, for example. And that was kind of where it was aimed at. Businesses had to spend a minimum of £25,000 in order to qualify, and any less than that would not qualify under the scheme. And that's kind of what we're going back to now, although not officially yet. And then RDEC was introduced in 2013. RDEC is very much a scheme aimed at larger businesses. It's a smaller amount that businesses get in terms of percentage, and it's a very, very complex claim to do. And again, that is something that the government is really trying to push at the moment, to push businesses towards an RDEC rather than an R&D scheme, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So once the scheme had been introduced, and it was very, very strict, it was the European Union at the time, our government was told that they weren't giving away enough money, essentially. So the scheme gradually got more and more generous, and more claims were therefore submitted, and more claims were paid out. And various changes happen in terms of what could be included, what couldn't be included, what rates were included. And there were lots of changes, ups and downs, to try and balance out the amount of money that HMRC were giving away. So it was the right amount, not too much, not too little. So as the scheme got more and more generous, what happened? They gave away too much money. It became an abused scheme, still is an abused scheme. Particularly during the pandemic years, we saw a massive surge of new R&D tax credit businesses entering the market. It was seen as easy money, and to set up an R&D tax credit consultant, this is still very much the same. You do not need any experience, you do not need to be an accountant, you do not need to be a tax specialist. So therefore, people sitting at home during COVID, not much to do with their time, they could just literally set up that business from the bedroom, and that is what's happened. Lots and lots of claims were submitted. The remit that HMRC were given by the government was to pay out, and don't question any claims whatsoever. So everyone got their money. Of course, the result of that was lots and lots of fraudulent claims, lots of claims that weren't done properly, and now HMRC are coming back and saying, hang on a minute, we gave you this money, don't think we should have done. And they're asking for that money back. So we're going through a real time of turmoil within the R&D tax credit scheme at the moment. So because of this, they've decided to make it much more restrictive again. And this is really where we are at the moment, and where we are sitting at the moment with those restrictions. There's been massive consultations going on behind the scenes, which the average business owner will not be aware of. And they've been consulting to restrict the scheme and to reduce the potential abuse of the scheme. The big consultation that's currently in the background is to merge the two schemes together. So there will not be two schemes. There will not be one for small businesses and one for large businesses. It'll be one scheme, but very much in the favour of large businesses, which we kind of think is a little bit unfair because those smaller businesses may be spending 10, 20, 30,000 pounds on innovation. They are not going to be able to claim anymore, we believe. This isn't through yet. This hasn't been voted on, but it is in consultation, and it is highly likely that this will be implemented. The other things they've introduced over the past couple of years to try and restrict claims a bit more, they introduced a pay-as-you-earn cap. So essentially you had to be spending so much money on employers' national insurance and pay-as-you-earn tax in order to be able to claim, and it was capped at an amount of 3 times the pay-as-you-earn that you pay. They've also removed things such as overseas expenditure. So before, you could have a team of people working in maybe China, for example, was a very common country to use for technical development. You have a team out there that you're outsourcing for. They were doing the work on behalf of a UK company. Unfortunately, that's not going to be an allowable expense anymore. They've also said that we've got to submit full computations, which most legitimate R&D companies were already doing that, but some were not, unfortunately. And we have to now submit a lot more in terms of written evidence. Again, during pandemic time, you didn't have to actually send any written evidence, believe it or not. So you see how easy this money was. Send one form into HMRC, charge people a lot of money. They got the money back. These companies are, of course, now closed down who were submitting claims that were not legitimate. But now there is specific requirement to submit a lot more written information. It's highly complex. It's quite difficult to get it in line with the current criteria in order to get it right and to make sure that that you get paid out. HMRC have employed a whole team of people to look at old cases and also recent cases as well, actually, and I'll touch on that in a little bit more detail shortly. So further changes on top of the changes I've just discussed. So those prior changes that I just talked about have come in gradually over the past year. And then the current situations are very, very recent over the past few months, and some of them only since August this year that have come in. We will be seeing reduced amounts getting paid out. So it's quite significant reductions in terms of the amount of money that a business can claim for. And before, you used to get your expenditure enhanced. So instead of being 100% of cost, they'd enhance it to 130%. Now it's down to 86%. So that's quite a big drop from 130% to 86%. It's not the amount you get, that's just the costs that you could put in your tax return. So it's going to impact businesses quite significantly. And again, those smaller companies with smaller R&D expenditure are going to struggle to submit claims. The reason for that is the percentage they're going to get is a lot less. The work to submit the claim is a lot more. The chance of that claim getting challenged is far, far higher. So for any legitimate R&D tax credit company doing the job properly, they have to charge more, unfortunately, and a lot of them have had to increase their minimum fees. And it's really impossible now, not impossible, but really, really challenging to submit your own R&D tax credit claim. So we feel it's a little bit unfair on some of those smaller businesses who can't maybe access an R&D tax credit consultant because they won't be able to afford to based on the amount of the claim and the extra work that's involved. The other thing that's changed is if you have not submitted an R&D claim ever before, the previous rule used to be that you could submit your claim within 2 years of the year end, so you could do 2 years at once. You didn't have to tell HMRC, you just submitted it. Now, if you've not submitted a claim before, you must tell them within 6 months of your year end of an intention to submit a claim. We're the best one in the world. It's not going to be top of people's priority list, or maybe they don't even realise they might be eligible for R&D tax credits. So it's really important to have that proactive conversation up front and then see if you might be eligible and submit that intention, even if you don't ever submit a claim. The claims are now subject to much more scrutiny, and because of that, it's becoming a much slower process. I've talked already about a move towards one scheme instead of the 2 schemes, again, very much in favour of larger businesses. And the reason for that, incidentally, is that HMRC have done a lot of number crunching, and it's all about job creation and creating more money into the economy. And they know that if they spend money on R&D and innovation at that higher end, that they know they get that back many more times than they do by investing in SMEs. It's all about numbers. So it's a much more challenging environment. It's a much slower process. The other bad news is all these people at HMRC who are reviewing their cases, they're not experienced tax specialists. They're administrators who have been trained to review R&D cases. But bearing in mind that a qualified accountant will have spent many years at university plus done tax exams in order to learn how to submit an R&D case. These people have had a few months training. So a good R&D tax credit consultant will push to get cases reviewed by an in-house tax specialist at HMRC and will not take the word of the inexperienced staff. But it's certainly a battle and it takes a long time. So that's the bad news. But of course, it's not all bad news. There is also some good news. And that's, I know, why you are here today, and you want to find out, is there any point doing this? Is there any point of an R&D claim? So the good news is there is still R&D money very, very much available. There is a lot of it still available. There are lots of eligible companies who are not claiming, who could claim. The current government is very pro-innovation and very pro-R&D tax credits. Their intention has always been stated that they intend to spend more money on making the UK much more innovative, and therefore they know they have to fund that in some way. The market in terms of R&D tax credit consultants is having a massive shakeout. Obviously, all these cases getting challenged, the restrictions being put into place means that a lot of the people who set up in the bedroom who didn't know what they were doing literally are disappearing. They can't answer the questions that HMRC are asking. They're closing their companies, which is not nice for the people who have had the claims, obviously. But what it means is the R&D tax credit experts that are going to be available in the next few years should be the good ones. They should be knowledgeable. They should be able to write a good case for you. And as it stands now, the scheme absolutely shows no signs of ending whatsoever. There's always been ring-fence money for R&D tax credits. It's at the moment, it seems highly unlikely that will be taken away. There could be a change of government. Even with that, it's still unlikely that the scheme will end, although it might be subject to more change, of course. So how can you have a successful claim? Talk to an R&D tax credit person as soon as you can, ideally before you innovate, so you can be then advised if it might qualify under the current criteria or if it won't. Obviously, there's the 6-month rule that I've talked about before. You've got to inform HMRC 6 months after your year end that you intend to make a claim. So it's really important to be proactive and have those early stage conversations. Keep good financial records. It's been a bit lax historically with R&D tax credits about the record keeping didn't actually have to be that good, according to HMRC. It is now better, even though the criteria don't state that the financial records have to be that good. It is better, and it will give you a more robust case if you've got good financial records and keep a log of your expenditure on the project. Keep good written records as well. It's not just about the numbers. The written part is the bigger part of the claim. Timelines are really important, what you did and when. So what month you started innovating, what projects you did, who did what and when, and that enables your R&D tax credit consultant to then build your case. Keep notes of things that went wrong and how you resolve them. So HMRC want to know that you've taken a risk in innovating. It wouldn't be innovation if there wasn't risk, and therefore with risk things go wrong. Make sure you log that, say what went wrong, how you resolve them, who resolved them, why you have a specialist skill internally that enables you to resolve them that perhaps someone else in your industry would not be able to do. HMRC look for a scientific or a technological advance. They look for lots of things. There's loads of criteria, but that is always a starting point. When I talk to someone, I look for that scientific or technological advance. As an example, I spoke to someone this week. They rang up and, well, we've done this bespoke CRM system. Well, what does it do compared to other CRM systems? Well, nothing really. We've had it branded with our colours. Right. Could any other CRM consultant, software developer create this? Oh yeah, really easily. There's no R&D there. You know, I'm sure it's a bespoke system, yeah, but it doesn't do anything different. There's no advancement. HMRC need to see that something has advanced and the product you're making or the software you're installing does something different to what else is available on the marketplace. Counterbalance to that, we are working with a recycling company, and they have learned how to recycle a product that previously hasn't been easily recyclable, and they've developed a new process. That would be considered a scientific advance because they're doing something that no one else has done before. They've took trial and error and they've taken risk. Another thing to consider is applying for advanced assurance. You can apply in advance to HMRC to say you're going to do a project, give them some information and ask them if they will pre-approve it. Once it's pre-approved, it makes your claims a lot easier to go through. The disadvantage with advanced assurance is, like everything else at HMRC, it's very slow. It can take a long time for them to get back to you. They don't always give you a definitive answer, even when after you've applied for it and waited months. But if you do get that advanced assurance, it is really, really valuable. So if you can wait and you're looking at spending significant money, do consider applying for advanced assurance. And the final thing I would say is don't write it yourself. You maybe could have got away with it a few years ago, and you may have someone in-house who's an R&D tax credit specialist. Some bigger companies do. That's absolutely fine. Of course, then you can write it yourself internally. But if you don't know what you're doing, please don't try to write it yourself. You get one stab at this. Yes, you can appeal, but essentially you get one stab at getting this right. So yeah, get it right first time. So that is everything about the current situation in R&D tax credits. Obviously there's loads of changes. I hope it's not all doom and gloom. I think we've got time just for a couple of questions if anyone's got any.
I've got a couple of questions for you, Vicky, if that's all right.
Yeah, fire away.
Yeah, I know you said it's dealing with HMRC, so things aren't a definite and it works in a specific way, but is there a rough idea of how long it takes if your claim is approved to get paid out?
Yeah, so once it's approved, the payouts generally are really, really quick, within a few days or a week. The thing that is actually really slow at the moment is from submission to approval. Okay. We certainly saw over the summer it could take 3, 4, 5 months, sometimes 6 months. They try and turn them around within 60 days. That is their internal KPI, but it's definitely taking longer. Be prepared for months rather than weeks, I would say.
So, and you obviously mentioned that there were lots of people who've done fraudulent claims or abused the system. What do HMRC do if they think someone's claim is not legitimate?
Yeah, so they ask lots of questions, first of all, big, long, scary letters, which you have to respond to, and then they will send you more scary letters until they are confident that the claim was fraudulent or not correct, or that it had errors in it. And they will either reduce the claim if they think it was partially misrepresented, or, you know, in error, I guess. But if they think it's actually fraudulent, then they will ask for all the money back, and they will also whack on a load of penalties as well.
It's good to know that people can't abuse the system as well as they used to be able to.
Yeah.
It does sound quite complicated, so thank you so much for your expert advice there, and hopefully people who can qualify and legitimately would really benefit from this money can hopefully continue to get it.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you, Vicky, that was brilliant.
Thank you.